So those of you who didn't like Truma and Tetzaveh, so guess what? We get to do a lot of this again. We get to implement all the things that you may not necessarily had connected to. So there's a couple of different ways to approach Parshat Vayakhel and to try to make it interesting. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at really one element, which is either fair or not fair, but it's here, so we should see it. And let's just start reading, and then hopefully we'll understand. Vayavo kol ish asher nas'o libo, v'kol asher nidva rucho oto, hiviu et trumat Hashem lemlechet Ohel Moed, u'lechol avodato lev'gdei kodesh. So whatever person, I would say, whose spirit stirred within them, and they had this spirit of generosity to bring over these gifts which were asked for in order to do the malacha, both in terms of the things itself, let's say the melechet Ohel Moed, of the Ohel Moed, and also for the big day Kodesh. So again, Truma was really about the building, and Tetzaveh was really more about the clothing. So there it said what we need, right? Parshat Truma was, bring these things, donate these things, and now it says, and yes, people donated. So all that is good, it's clear, it's nice, and it's the next pasuk which is a little bit more complex because maybe it's not necessary, and that's why we have to start speaking about it. Because when it said kol ish, I would have said kol ish doesn't necessarily mean literally man in terms of gender. It could have been each person. I'm not sure exactly how you would have wanted to say it. Kol ish could have been each person. And we understand that sometimes the language is inclusive, sometimes not. The problem is the next pasuk. Vayavo ha'anashim al hanashim. Now the word al is also difficult. So the men something, the women, vayavo ha'anashim al hanashim, kol nediv hiviu chach v'nezim v'tabat v'chumaz, kol kli zahav, v'kol ish asher hinif tnufa zahav l'Hashem. So aside from just saying that there were men whose spirit stirred them, which could have been any member of the Jewish people, of Bnei Israel, so now it added this other element about women donating, and then the things which they donate, the chach and the nezim, the tabat and the kumaz, especially the kumaz, creates some controversy as far as what these things are, and for some, how appropriate it is to donate for the Mishkan. And that itself is very interesting in terms of what is an appropriate donation and what's not an appropriate donation. And now one of the places that I'm going to end up going, which I don't like, I just want to tell you I don't like it, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm following the Mefarshim to a great extent, is there any need now to go into what's the motivations? So I'm sure on your travels just now, you've seen many great shuls, and right? And then did you say each time, well, I wonder what this guy did wrong if he's donating this. You see how innocent. He doesn't think that way. The generosity of spirit. So the generosity of spirit is great, and you would not want to go down that other path. I think I mentioned this to a fundraiser at some point, and it was like a light went off. I said, just follow the scandals. Like, so you can fix all this. We'll give you absolution, right? You don't even have to confess. What's the matter? all my innocent friends over here. And by the way, again, I want to say that I am not ascribing really bad motivations, and that's what I said. I don't like this. I don't like going down that path. I really am like you. There's just something a little twisted, maybe someplace. I really am like most of you. Say, no, that's really nice. That's really great. Yeah. See what she did. See what she did. Is that a way to? 100%. See how easy that was. You could be a parshanit as well. Okay, but that's going to be one of the issues that could come up. But again, why separate the men from the women and so on? Whew, she's flying today. V'kol isha shenimtza ito tchel v'argaman v'tolat sheni v'sheish v'yizim. Anybody has all these wonderful colors and so on, they can donate them. Kol merim trumat kesef v'nachol sheraviu. Also, there's a need for various precious metals. V'kol shem seito eitzei shitim. Whoever has certain types of wood and so on, bring it on. V'kol isha chachmat lev v'yodeh tavu. And any woman who is particularly skilled when it comes to sewing, so wonderful. Let her bring these skills. I two different people I saw in the last couple of weeks raised the same question, and that was: did the people who worked on the Mishkan, were they just the artisans that had worked on? Now you can, if I say the pyramids, someone's going to say to me, "Well, the Jews didn't really build the pyramids. Of course we built it." I don't care. The various projects that they worked on, Pitom, Ramses, the various things that they did, maybe we had artisans there. So maybe all that we did is that we hired the same people and we brought them here, because there are some midrashim that say no, is that that there is something else happened over here. It's much more this spiritual gift happened. So if I had to explain the spiritual side of it, it does say it. Maybe it's a little more next week, a little later on this week. It talks about V'yimalu, they got filled up with the Spirit of God. So why say they got the Spirit of God? So maybe it had to do with the understanding of precisely what it is that God wanted, which means the specifications is where the Spirit came in. Or you can say the Spirit came in that gave somebody whose hands just didn't have that kind of dexterity to do certain things, that suddenly they found the ability that they were able to do it. But I do think that it's interesting over here. So again, is chachmat lev something internal, that she has the skill, she always had the skill, she'd been sewing before, or now suddenly this skill emerges? I guess you could do the same thing. And by the way, the easier way to read this is, it sounds like it's a default. This, if you want to go down the path of the golden calf, and you want to say, for whatever reason, I don't know where you get these things from, that the women didn't sin, like we'll double back to that. But let's just say that you're right, and that the women didn't sin. So if the women didn't sin, so one of the things that we'll see is that they receive a present. And that present is that they don't work on Rosh Chodesh. Right? Do we know this? So I don't know if any of the women here have this custom. You look like you never heard of it. So because okay, no, but that's actually a part of it. At least in one of the Sfarim that I saw, and early, that talked about the custom of women not working on Rosh Chodesh. What it says, the thing that they don't do is sewing. And laundry, well, laundry is by choice, apparently. Yeah, no, it's sewing. It's why? Because it says, and it goes back to connect all of this with the Chet Egel, again, one way or the other. By the way, why Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh, because the moon is something which goes in. There's a cycle. There's a time that it disappears, and there's a time that it reappears. There's no moon. There's a sliver of a moon. Then there's a full moon, and then it goes away. So Moshe is not here, but they believe he's going to come back. So therefore, there will be that sliver. Rosh Chodesh is going to happen, and therefore, this belief in this cycle whereby Moshe is going to come back would seem to be the reason why specifically Rosh Chodesh. So again, I think that is the connection. And again, just to finish this off, it goes back the Kolisha Asher Nasa Liban Otna Bechokma Tavu Et Izim, and it comes back, it doubles back on this. So again, it's men, which I could have thought was just generic, and then there's men and women, and then there are the Kol Ish. Again, that Kol Ish in Pasuk Kaf Gimel, I think is generic. I think it's everyone. But then we have Kol Isha in Kafei, the Kol Hanashim in Kavav. Afterwards in Kav Zayin, you have the Nisi'im. The Nisi'im, again, according to the Midrash, they feel, hold it, what about us? We got left out of all of this. And they bring the Avnei Shoham and Pasuk Kaftet, Kol Ish V'Isha. And then once you see this, Kol Ish V'Isha, I'll read further, Asher Nadav Libam Otam Lavi L'Kol HaMalacha Asher Tzivah Hashem Lasot B'Yad Moshe Yaviu B'nei Yisrael Nadavar L'Hashem. And it's at this point that you realize, when it doubles back to Ish V'Isha, as opposed to Pasuk Kaf Aleph, which was Ish, and then Kafbet, Anashim al Nashim. So now you just realize this whole section was a little bit more complicated. And we don't know. The truth is, we don't know what to do with all this. I just want to say that if you have complete clarity, then wonderful. But it seems to be somewhat confusing because I just could have said people who were stirred, brought donations, and that would have been it. But nonetheless, we seem to have this really interesting divide. So let's start with source number 2. And what I am going to say today is that whatever sources I bring, I could have brought most likely tenfold that say the same thing. And I chose what I chose for the reasons that I chose it, generally succinct, and it says it in a certain way. There may be more, by the way, also just want to know stylistically what I do. Generally, I will try to find the more popular commentary to say something, even if it's not necessarily the first. So for Rashi said something, so I think that just a level of comfort with Rashi, and I don't have to go and find necessarily before. And so I'll say it, I'll just leave it like that. Over here, the Midrash Hagadol, ויבואו אנשים על אנשים, מלמד שהיו הנשים מקדימים לאנשים. The women did this first. Again, he's looking at Pasuk Kaf Bet, ויבואו הנשים על אנשים. So what did he just now do? Time to donate, the women go running. And the men now are trying to catch up to the women who are in front of them. לפי כך, זכו נשים של אותו הדור יתר מן הנשים, that the women were able to go in and the men didn't go in. Now, there's something really interesting here in the background that will go down the line that you wanted to go down, and now you see he's just avoiding it, and that's what's interesting. Because I could have said one of a couple of things. There's 2 major sins that take place in the desert. One major sin is the Chet HaEgel, sin of the golden calf, and the other one is the Chet HaMeraglim. And by both of them, we have decrees which are given. Rashi, by the way, believes that the reason that we are 40 years in the desert is because of the Chet HaEgel, not because of the Meraglim. I know that sounds a little confusing, because by the Meraglim it says, okay, therefore you're going to be here for 40 years, and Rashi there points out, but there's only 39 years left. You can't say it's a 40-year punishment, it's only 39 years. So he says that they already got the punishment by the Meraglim, but they got a suspended sentence. And when it's kind of, I don't know how many of you have been arrested, and Baruch Hashem, you're laughing. I once gave a class someplace, I'm not even going to say where. It was a class at Rabbi Kiva in prison. And I said, have any of you been to prison? And the whole place goes quiet. And apparently there was a guy in the back that just got out of prison. So I have to be careful the questions that I ask. So coming back to this point, if somebody could be arrested and they can be told that, okay, this is your first offense. The truth is you deserve 40 years. But I'm giving you, you're out. But if you do something wrong, then you're going to go back and get that original sentence. So that's essentially what Rashi does over here with the Chet HaEgel. But I could have said the Chet HaEgel, the women didn't sin. And that's what you wanted to say from the beginning. We'll see why one could or one shouldn't say such a thing. But let's say the women didn't sin with the Egel. So I should say the women didn't sin with the Egel. So therefore, they never got the 40-year sentence. So therefore, of course, the women should go into the land of Israel. Or even better, you can say that the women didn't sin also with the Meraglim. They believed, they wanted to go into the land of Israel. As long as the men who were troubled with whatever men are troubled with. So therefore, either way. And now you have to go back and look at this Medrash Hagadol and say, hold it a second. Why are you ascribing the reason or the rationale for women to have gone into Israel, not because they didn't sin here and not because they didn't sin there, but rather because they ran with a great degree of enthusiasm to donate, and the men had to go chasing after women, which itself could be interesting. In source number 3, the Medrash Tanchum, Davar Acher, Lo Yugat Mitzadik Inav, V'shah Sheba Moshe V'amar L'Yisrael, Chum Mitchem Truma, like everybody has this great amount of joy and they want to do this. And that, now I don't know if to call, once again, we have our problem. Do we want to call it the elephant in the room, the Chet HaEgel, or the Egel in the room? I mean, there's something here in the background that, yes, obviously we have to consider this. What is the sequence? Did it happen yet? Did it not happen yet? How do we fit in the whole timeline here, the chronology? It's the word al. Oh no, it sounds like this could lead to mixed dancing, donating to the Mishkan. umivim hanadava, shenema v'kol isha chachmat lev, and so on. But it also continues and says, Vayakhel v'chein ktiv hamalacha hayta dayam. V'yomer o Moshe lemor marbima am lavi. Now, if you just keep reading the psukim here, you draw a very simple conclusion. And what's that? That everybody was very enthusiastic about giving. So now you have to go back and say, okay, if everyone's enthusiastic and they bring more than they need, so then how do you fit the women to all of this? So apparently you're going to say then the women were more enthusiastic even. But I'm just saying it's that once you read the psukim further on, you're a little confused as far as exactly what's going on. In source number 4, the Midrash Agadah, V'yavo Nashim al Hanashim, Ma bo l'lamdeinu, Ki amru Yisrael, B'ma yitchaper avon prikat nizmei, Nishotenu ubanenu uvenotenu asher natnu lasot Elohei zahav. Don't shake your head yes, it's the opposite of what you said. Yeah. You got fooled. Oh, there was one familiar word over here, so I guess that's the same thing. Okay. Pause. Let's look at source number 5, and then we'll come back and look at source number 4 again, and we will try to make sure that we are not confused. In source number 5, we have the Chet Egel, right? We didn't have a share last week. You were all too busy drinking or doing whatever you do on Purim, right? I guess here not. You were preparing to drink. Vayar ha'am ki boshesh Moshe laredet min ahar. Moshe delayed. Vayakhel ha'am al Aaron. By the way, it's also interesting. You have that same al over here. They gather upon Aaron. Vayomer lev kum aseh lanu Elohim asher yachu lefanenu ki zeh Moshe ish asher alinu me'eretz Mitzrayim lo yadanu ma yalo. We don't know what happened to Moshe. Vayomer leim Aaron, and Aaron says to them, Perkud nizmei hazahav asher ba'oznei neshechem b'neichem v'notechem v'viu alai. And Aaron says, oh, sure, bring your wives and your children, your daughters and sons' jewelry. Now, if you were to ask me, go ahead, ask me, what is Aaron thinking? To me, it's clear it's a delay tactic. And I think there are a couple of delay tactics here along the way. So essentially saying, sure, go bring your wife's jewelry is the perfect way for this thing to end very, very quickly. But the problem is the next pasuk. And by the way, so it's at this point that I'll put words into Rena's mouth. You say, tell the wives to give, but the wives never gave. But my only question will be, how do you know that? And my follow-up to that would be, how do we read Pasuk Gimel? And Pasuk Gimel, I think, can be read in more than one way. V'yitperku kol ha'am et nizmei hazahav asher ba'ozneim v'yaviu el Aaron. And all the people of the nation, should I do that again? You don't like that I did that. And all, should I explain all? You can say, but what does all mean? Right? We're getting to Bill Clinton territory now, right?
No, but when you say doesn't that usually refer
V'yitperku kol ha'am et nizmei hazahav asher ba'ozneim v'yaviu el Aaron. So now you realize that you could say, oh no, it's just the Erev Rav. And I will go on record by saying, Baruch Hashem, I wish I had an Erev Rav that I can blame everything that I ever do on. It's like the best thing in the world. Everybody needs an Erev Rav. By the way, one of the other things that this is subtle, but you could really do this, especially the more religious somebody is. So, do you believe there's an Erev Rav around today? Say, yeah, who's the Erev Rav? Let somebody tell you who their Erev Rav is, and then you'll know a great deal about them. I asked my students this week if they were to make an up-to-date today Pesach Haggadah, and I showed them the artwork through the generations of the 4 sons. So I said, if you would pick a wicked son, what would the wicked son look like today? I mean, how would you? And I think it's a really good question to ask for the Seder also. But that's essentially the same question. Who's your wicked son? Who is your Erev Rav? So it's great. You just want to say, no, we didn't do. We got the Erev Rav. Again, my mother comes to me. What happened to your room? It wasn't me. It was the Erev Rav. I mean, I think it's great. I think what happened to the car? The Erev Rav. I think it's a wonderful thing for us to utilize as much as possible. Yes. Oh, the men. Interesting. How do you know? I don't know. You can always say, I mean, I would have been tempted to say that the Am Dafka is the Im, it's the hangers on. I would have said that's the Erev Rav, and not necessarily Bnei Yisrael versus the Am. I think there's some places in Midbar you can go down that path. Nonetheless, what's my problem? My problem is God's response. Why does God then say, okay, let's wipe the entire people, even the women? So what? So God doesn't seem to know my parshanut. That's what bothers me. So one way of reading that, right? Where are we? Still in source number 5, Perek Lamed Bet. Everybody gave donations. Now go back a second and let's read source number 4 again.
First of all, it seems like the men also have jewelry.
Yes, yes. Yes. Yes, the men, the men, maybe we'll see. There are some commentaries who go out of their way to say this was an Egyptian custom. Of course, it's not the Jewish custom. The men were still Egyptian in certain ways, and getting rid of this was this all comes from their Egyptian sensibility, the egel and even the earrings. But you realize that we're working very hard to say that. I remember years ago, somebody involved in chinuch had a student in one of these yeshivas, and the student put in an earring. So he went to Rabbi Yashuv and asked, and Rabbi Yashuv said, "It's mutter." Like, what do you want? It says it's mutter. So I spoke to Rav Lichtenstein once about this kind of thing as well. And he said to me, there are certain things, now you know Rav Lichtenstein, there are certain things that Judaism looks upon as scants. And we find this, and it's worthwhile setting educational boundaries, but nonetheless, it doesn't mean that they're prohibited. And he said to me that the YU rabbis in the 60s had this problem in terms of long hair. That there was no real halacha against long hair, but nonetheless, there was a political statement involved in it, and they had to decide what exactly a yeshiva student should be, if in fact YU is a yeshiva. I don't mean to pick on anybody when I say that. I'm just asking what their self-definition is. Okay, let us continue. Vayomer leim Aaron pirku nizmei hazahav asher baznei neshechem b'neichem v'notechem v'viviu elai v'yitpu kol ha'am nizmei hazahav asher bazneim v'viviu el Aaron. So it really does sound like everyone brought. So go back to source number 4. Vayavon ish Moshe ma bo lamdenu ki OUIsrael b'mei yitchaper al prika yitchaper avon prikat nizmei nishotenu uvanenu uvnotenu asher natananu lasod elei zahav. How are we going to get healed from having given? And the assumption in this midrash is that when Aaron asked for in Pasuk Bet is what they did. Pasuk Gimel reflects Pasuk Bet and is not some kind of a shift that, and therefore the women were involved as well. Of course, you can again try to make a distinction. Said the men brought the women's jewelry, and the women were not involved. But I think at this point you'd be working a little bit harder if you actually said that. I also want to point out another thing. Well, first of all, Pasuk Gimel is good. V'yitparku kol ha'am. V'yitparku is a very strong language. It's like they threw it off them. That's also a great deal of enthusiasm. So therefore, one could now say that all this enthusiasm, it's not just the fact that they give, it's the way that they give. I mean, that also makes a very big difference in terms of somebody giving to somebody give because, what can I do? And, they feel like they're bleeding if they give $10 or $100 or $1,000 or $1 million. I mean, some people do it out of pain and some people do it out of a very different attitude. I mean, I have a friend who I truly believe he works today only to be able to give money. I don't believe he has what he needs for the rest of his life. And I truly believe that he works today so that he can support institutions and so on, because he just like his financial career was involved in investments, he sees this as investments. And I've heard him use the word investment when he talks about donations. I'm investing in this, whatever this cause may be. Afterwards, we can talk. You have to raise money also? Okay. But when we continue, I mean, again, if I want to point out Aaron's delay tactic in Pasuk Hey, Vayar Aaron vayiven mizbeach lefanav. I think the building of a mizbeach is a second delay tactic. Oh, if we want to do something, we need to build a proper mizbeach. So then you start a whole building committee and so on and so forth. So that is another delay tactic. But finally, Vayikra Aaron vayomer chag laHashem machar. we're serving God tomorrow. So that's also really important, that Aaron is still talking about Yud Kei Vav Kei. They're talking about the Egel, he's talking about God, and but tomorrow. And Aaron was right. Moshe did come down tomorrow, and he's just trying to delay. So as I said, I think there's multiple things. But the problem is the next pasuk. Pasuk Vav, Vayashkimu mimacharat. So now they channel their inner Avram Avinu. Oh, let's get up early. Time to serve. Vayalu alot, big shush shlamim. And they bring these offerings. Vayeshev ha'am le'echol, v'shatu, v'yakamu letzachek. So they essentially have a wonderful party. Now letzachek, Rashi at least tells us, where's the Rashi? Look at source number 9. Litzachek yesh b'mashma hazeh gili arayot. K'mo shenemar litzachek bi. Right? Eshet Potiphar saying, the Hebrew has come to, this Hebrew lad has come to abuse me, as it were, litzachek. So Rashi, so if there is gili arayot, the odds are really strong that women were involved. Are you with me on that, or my math is off? Yeah. So again, as much as you want to tell me, oh no, the women are not involved at all, it's not necessarily the easiest argument. On the other hand, if you look at source number 6, it's the Targum Yonatan or Pseudo Yonatan, turns back into Aramaic. But Yisarvu hanashim l'teitach shitim l'baleim. He puts it right there in the text, and the woman refused. Right, uminyad perkul kol am and izmei zavasher ba'ozneim v'yilaron. So therefore, no, the people, no, it was the other, the women one. It's the men. The men pulled out their own earrings and they gave them. And izmei zavasher ba'ozneim. I think that's what he means. So Kolam is all the people, but not the women. The women refused to participate. Look at the Ibn Ezra, source 7. So now I'm just pointing out that verse was not as easy to read as some of us maybe think it is, and maybe there's a way to read it one way, there's a way to read it another way. And what does it come down to? So what does Kol Ha'am mean? Kol Ha'am. I mean, Kol Ha'am. If I say Min Ha'am, Kol Ha'am is a little difficult. And I'll say it again. What bothers me more than this is that God says, okay, that's it, we're wiping them all out. If at least 50% of the population are not involved, then what are you talking about, wipe them out? In source number 8 is called the Torah Shlema. So I'll just ask you real quick. Do you know what it is? Right. So this is why rabbis can still look impressive, because people don't know the Torah Shlema. Years ago, when I bought my copy of it, I just don't want to say my copy. Originally, when it was published like in smaller volumes, like Parsha by Parsha, and it took up this much space on. So today they put it into they're only this tall and like this fat, and there's only like 9 or so volumes. It only goes through Bamidbar. It's an encyclopedia of Torah Sheba'al Peh on the Chumash, written by Rabbi Kasher, Menachem Mendel Kasher. And if you know, let's say, the Torah Tamima, imagine the Torah Tamima on serious steroids. And again, 1,000-fold. So he brings on every pasuk multiple midrashim, and then he has footnotes explaining and discussing all kinds of commentaries. So I've seen very impressive rabbis who give very impressive classes, and the whole thing is like one footnote of Rav Kasher. It's then, again, people don't know. And also, I've told rabbis, invest, go buy it. It's Al HaTorah now has just now started putting it up online. So if you look at Al HaTorah, you can find it, I think, at least Bereshit Shemot. Maybe they'll get to Vayikra as well. Continue. Source number 8 is the Torah Shlema on Shemot Lamed Hey, Pasuk Kaf Bet, but it's a footnote. Ha'ara Shtein. ובכתב יד, לאחד מהראשונים, ויבואו אנשים על אנשים, יחד בלב שלם. שלא יאמרו לאחר שנבנה משכן, מה כוח בנשים לתת בלא דעתנו. וכן האישה לא תאמר, מה כוח באיש לתת תכשיטים בלא דעתנו. Why do they have to come together? In order to avoid fighting. The woman's going to say, hold it, how can you go make this donation without talking to me? And the man can say, whose money is that? How can he go take it? שכבר זכו בביזת מצרים לעצמן, שנאמר ושאלה אישה משכנתה, ונמצא גזל, בקדוש ברוך הוא שונא גזל. So now I am not going to go deeper into this than you see the words in front of you, But now you can start asking other kinds of questions. And it was really behind what I was asking before, that when someone gives a donation, should I be really looking into what the motivation is? Should I know what kind of guilt or really good thoughts that they have? Should I try to figure all of this out? Do I have to check where the money comes from? I mean, years ago, um, Milken gave a right Michael Milken, who either fairly or maybe unfairly by the government was prosecuted, but he donated to JTS. And I think there was a big debate whether to take. I think they did accept the donation, but do I say, hold it? This man was one, but there's worse things. I mean, with him it was all financial crimes, and they made laws afterwards in order to stop him from doing what he was doing. But let's just say that Jeffrey Epstein left in his will money for a program on ethics. Do you say, yeah, okay, listen, what do I care where the money comes from? Or do you say, no, 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 we can't, we, from Epstein? Okay. From his brother was going to.
The lawyer. The lawyer of his estate came to my talk in the synagogue and heard me speak and wanted to give me a large amount of money afterwards.
Why don't you talk to a rabbi first?
That's the chairman of the board.
Okay. But it's even more interesting when a person's not alive, because then maybe there's some kind of an intent to have some kind of a tikkun of a neshama and whatever. But I understand exactly why it could be extremely distasteful. There is one major charity which was absolutely against the spirit of the life of a person who, I'm not saying the name now publicly. If you want, I'll tell you afterwards. And the lawyer just started giving money left and right all over the place to do good deeds for a person who never wanted to do good deeds. So I guess in his mind, there was a big estate there, and there was good reason, taxes and so on, to give charity. And he decided, I'm going to do a tikkun for the neshama. Let's continue over here, because over here, it just now took us, hold it. The money that let's say a woman borrowed some clothing from someone. Now I have to go back. When she borrowed it, did she have to really return it? Can I give a donation of that to the Beit HaMikdash? And it starts to get into a much more interesting question. By the way, a number of years ago, I both spoke about and later on I wrote about an idea which is found in multiple commentaries. The Netziv talks about it, the Parshat talks about it. I'm trying to remember how much earlier it goes, but that is that, and they quote this Gemara about Reb Chia, Gadol Maaseh Reb Chia, that Reb Chia, he's the one who opens up schools in order to teach kids, but one of the things that it says that he does is he goes and he plants things, and then the things that grow, he uses them in order to write scrolls and have scrolls written, and some people have, why don't you just buy scrolls? So he says, no, I'm trying to create something which is holy, so every part of what's holy needs to be holy. The foundation of holiness needs to be holy, and you can't have anything which is tainted within it. And they go so far as to say that that's true with the Big Day Kahn, and Aaron would have felt the difference, right? Walking in with a beautiful, whatever it is, Big Day Cohen, but how beautiful could it be if it was based upon a donation of something like this? You can't build something holy without holy ingredients. It just doesn't work that way. So as I said, I wrote about that. I'm not going into that more than that right now, but you realize over here that things are a little bit more complicated, and I just want to read a little bit more than that over here. V'od tam acher shelo natan einav be'eshet chavero, is that as they were going in, each person was together with his wife, right? It was the men with the women with the men. They went in together, unified, to give it. And therefore they came in as couples and made their donations as couples, which I guess sounds very nice. And that's what Bilam had seen when he said, oh, look how beautiful this is. Now, this theme, I'm going to come back to this, of the men and the women together, saying, this, look, it's important for a couple to be in sync. And to say that the donations were in sync does create a very nice image. And I just hope that you appreciate what it says here. Now, let's go back to where you wanted to lead us to begin with, and just realize it wasn't easily accessible. We're going to the Pirkei Belezer. So first, full understanding. For a lot of us, when we see that it says there's a midrash, right? Midrashim are not created equal. There are ancient midrashim, and then there are later midrashim. If you have a midrash, let's just say in the Mechilta, that's pretty old. If you have a midrash in the Pirkei de Lezer, it's a little bit more. I don't want to use the word suspect because that's not fair, but it's later. I mean, exactly how late the Pirkei de Lezer is, that's subject to debate. Let's put it this way: there's a very strong suspicion that it's after the start of Islam. Because it talks about Yishmael and talks the name of Yishmael's wife, which happens to be the same name as the wife of Muhammad. So, and then there's a couple of things there that leads one to say that, oh, this is really quite late midrash. But let's read. Dan Aaron din beno leben atzmo im ani omer lahem tnu li kesef v'zahav miyad hem meviim el hareini omer lahem tnu nizmei neshechem v'bneichem v'natechem miyad adav batel. That is what I had said earlier as the first delay tactic. If he would have said, just bring in gold. I don't care where it came from. But he says, no, bring me your wives' gold, your children. He thought that would be the end of it. Shamua Nashim, the women heard about this. V'lo ratzu. Okay, that's it. See, this is what you were educated on. They said, ma pitom. No. V'lo kablu aleim litain nizmeim lebaleim. And they absolutely refused. Over here, I left the footnotes. So you could follow them if you want, the footnotes from Rabbi David Luria, lots of interesting things, including the idea of where do we get this idea that women don't work on Rosh Chodesh is there in footnote Kaf. If you see it there, he brings a number of different commentaries who say this. Okay? Yeah, in footnote Kaf Bet, which we're not up to, it says Shehein Mishmarot Rosh Chodesh Yoter Ma'anashim Kima Shekatuv B'Yerushalmi Rosh Perek Daled. Dipsachim Rosh Perek Daled is a perek which is called Makom Shenahagu. It's a perek which deals with all kinds of customs. It starts with customs of Erev Pesach, so it says like what happens if a woman has a custom that she doesn't work on a particular day? They do respect that custom. So it goes women. Right, don't work on Rosh Chodesh more than men. So they mishmarot Rosh Chodesh Hashem. Just to realize something again, I don't know how much we want to go into side points. We're going to have to finish it at some point today. But Rosh Chodesh in Israel, when there was a Beit HaMikdash, was different from Rosh Chodesh in Chutz La'aretz, when there was a Beit HaMikdash, and it was different from Chutz La'aretz when there is no Beit HaMikdash. So the whole history of, which means essentially when you bring a special korban in the Beit HaMikdash, it created a certain degree of holiness. And when you don't have that, there's something else. There's a famous Gemara that when Rav, he learned in yeshiva in Israel with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he travels to Bavel, where he spends the rest of his life, and he walks into a shul, and they're saying Hallel, and he has no idea what's going on. What are they doing saying Hallel in Rosh Chodesh? Apparently, they only said Hallel in Israel when there was a Beit HaMikdash. No Beit HaMikdash, no Korban Musaf brought, so then you don't say Hallel, because Hallel was the Shira that the Levium would have said, but we have no Beit HaMikdash, you don't do this. And then he walks in and he finds they're saying Hallel, and then he realizes that they're only saying half Hallel, right? And everybody asks, hold it, did they say the bracha or not say the bracha? With Machlok Ashkenazim and Sfardim, so then people don't want to say he came in late. So then some say, oh, it must be that he came in early for the second minyan. Whatever. But Rav is there shocked that they're saying Hallel at all. So apparently they didn't say Hallel in Israel post second Beit HaMikdash. And as I said, these things are a bit more dynamic than sometimes we think. So over here in this footnote, it tells us the Yisham says, no, the women guarded or shomer, guarded is a terrible word to use. They, what word should we use instead? They observed. They observed Rosh Chodesh much more than men did. So as I said, if you're interested in any of the literature, so this footnote will take you in that direction. But what you do see from the Pirkei Lezer is that women were not involved in that. Instead, El Amru lahem lasot shekut v'toiva she'en b'koach latzil lo nishma lachem, to make idolatry, and you think that's going to help you? V'natan l'makadosh baruch hu scharam ba'olam hazeh, and God gave them reward of this word. Shehem mishamrot roshei chodashim yoter min anashim. V'natan l'm schar l'olam haba shehem atidot lehitchadesh k'mo roshei chodashim. So this whole idea of a cycle going together with Rosh Chodesh, ebbing and weighing and so on, waning, and to talk about, and go back again, because I'm reading this into Moshe's disappearance and appearance. I see this as being absolutely connected. Shenemar, till that time, the men used to have earrings. Now this goes to your point. So you notice Arabs are being mentioned over here as well, which again is why one would be somewhat suspect as far as when the timing here. In their ears, it doesn't say the men, but I'm going to say it again. You can read these verses in different ways. Okay, so till this point, we realize that we have tension regarding women's participation in the Chet Egel, and then the flip side, because again, if the women sinned with the Chet Egel and they donated then, so now they're donating now as well, and they fix it. Then they did it with a great deal of enthusiasm, and now they're doing it with a great deal of enthusiasm. On the other hand, if you want to flip it and say, no, the women did not sin with the Chet Egel, and they refused. But when it came to something which is holy, then they chose to be involved. Now, everything we just now saw is one side of the issue. There's another side which, again, you could argue with me is not necessarily organically connected, but we're connecting it. Source number 11, it says, Vayaset akior nechoshet, ve'et kano nechoshet, b'marot hatzovot asher tzav'u petach ohamoed. Now, the first problem that we have is simply translating those words. I know that for some of you, translation should be very easy, but it's not at all a consensus how you translate those words. I'm going to just read to you one translation and then point out what the problem is. Vayaset akior nechoshet, ve'et kano nechoshet. So that first part of the verse is easy. They made these things out of copper. Good, good. B'marot hatzvaot. So what does b'marot hatzvaot mean? Or even better, what does hatzvaot mean? What does marot mean? So now you all are going to tell me that marot means mirrors. And the only problem with that is that the usual translation of marot is visions. Right? A vision that Yecheskel has. A mar'eh is a vision. It's a prophetic vision. Nonetheless, b'marot hatzvaot, so let's just say they made it from mirrors. The word hatzovot is translated by many from the same word as tzava, as an army, or those who gathered together. V'marot hatzovot, from those who gathered, asher tzav'u, the people who gathered, petach ohamoed, by the gate of the ohamoed. So I'll read to you one translation I have here. He made the copper basin, its copper base, from the mirrors of those who gathered for service. But that was just really interesting added in, who gathered for service at the entrance of the tent of meeting. It just now gave a purpose for that gathering. If you look at Targum Onkelos, Vavad Yat Kiora de Nechosha, Yat Peseh Nechosha, B'michzayata, again, what did that mean, right? Is that a mirror? Nishaya. By the way, just notice he put in the women. The Atayin Litzal'ah, who came to pray. Sali is to pray. They came to pray. Vitra Mashkan Zimna. That's where they would come and pray. So essentially, the women who would come, they made their donations to the Mishkan. The English translation of Onkelos is, he made the basin out of copper, and the base of copper from the mirrors of the women who came to pray at the entrance of the Ohel Moed. I'm not going to get involved in the question of what Ohel Moed means in this context. A number of commentators talk about it. The Targum Yerushalmi, Vavad Yat Kiora de Nechosha, Yat Besis Didei de Nachash, Bechaziat Neshayat Tzniata. It added another word, is Tzniata, is listen, you're ready to talk about women, so let's throw in Tzniut as well, right? You have to throw in Tzniut or Lashon Hara, right? That's the problem with most classes for women. It's not, either they'll talk about Tzniut or they'll talk about Lashon Hara. You're shaking your head. The Havet Tzni'an, so it's interesting that the Tzvaot, it just made believe there was a nun there, kind of, and an ayin Tzniuta, the Havet Tzniut Pitra, Mishkan Zimran. There were these modest women who came to the Mishkan. And like I say again, that's really interesting. The Targum Yonatan, we'll skip 14, go straight to the Hebrew in 15. It was made out of the mirrors of modest women. ובעת שבאות להתפלל בפתח חול המועד, היו עומדות על קורבן דמיהם, ומשבחות ומודות ושבות לבעליהם, ויולדות בנים צדיקים בזמן שמטהרות מן טומאת דמם. So now you realize he just threw a lot of things in over here, and I hope what you're beginning to understand is that we're getting a narrative. A narrative is being created by this. All that it says is they donated mirrors. So, not even mirrors. Arguably, it says they donated mirrors in order to make these the basin, right? That should have been enough. But nonetheless, you see one commentary to the other, again, talking about the women, and now we have tzniut, but we have even more over here. Come to pray, but over here there was more. It's when they would bring a korban. When they would bring a korban. So why did they bring a korban? So presumably they bring a korban because they gave birth. There's a korban afterwards. And I'm going to stop and I'm going to go to Rashi. Anyway, Rashi's more familiar, and Rashi's going to create a whole nother problem. B'marot hatzvaot, benot Yisrael yu biyadan marot shiraot bahem kishehin mitkashtot. That when they would pretty themselves up, they would have a mirror that they would look at. V'yafotan lo ikvu milavi l'nvot hamishkan. And even these mirrors, they didn't have, which is Rashi saying, even they gave everything. We need to build the Mishkan. So whatever you need, just take. And Moshe didn't like this because Moshe said, oh, this is there for the Yetzer Hara. Now I have to stop a second because there's just a lot to talk about this. There really is a lot to talk about this. I mean, one, I would certainly bring this into the discussion when we're told that Moshe separates from his wife and say, what is going on, and what do I do with this? Is this really the Yetzer Hara? I mean, for a woman to look attractive to her husband, is that really Yetzer Hara? If it is Yetzer Hara, by the way, it's the Yetzer Hara being focused in a very particular direction, and I don't want to say it's strange, I don't want to say it's disturbing. It's certainly interesting, but it wouldn't necessarily have been the first word that we would have used. There is a Gemara which talks about that when they built the second Beit HaMikdash, and they all started, some people started crying, some started laughing, and said the Yetzer Hara is still with us. And then it says they defeated, but they heard a cry come out from the Kodesh HaKadoshim when they defeated. So it's also really interesting to say that the Yetzer Hara coming from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Again, there's lots of different ways to describe that Gemara, but to say that it comes out from the Kodesh HaKadoshim could mean to me that I need to rethink exactly what Yetzer Hara really means. And if it's sublimated into a relationship with a husband and wife, again, you know the word I'm trying to avoid, don't you? I'm trying to avoid Christian influences and look at original sin and say that essentially puritanical attitudes towards sexuality is such that all thoughts and actions of sexual activity is automatically something in the realm of the Yetzer Hara. I don't know why I would say. I mean, I don't believe the Ramban would say that. Ramban wrote a book on Kedusha in terms of intimacy. It's Kedusha. Why Yetzer Hara? Nonetheless, Moshe feels this way. It could be the women don't feel this way. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu kibel ki elu chavivin alai min hakol. And all the more so, I want this. I accept this. They're beloved to me. Shayadeim emdu anashim tzvaot. You see the word tzvaot. Rabot b'Mitzrayim. They created legions of Jews. Why? Because again, he's going to say, because the husbands were tired. The women would bring them food. By the way, complete opposite of the Chet Egel. But were intimate in a holy way. They would look at the two of them together in the mirror. It's also interesting. And she would try to endear herself to him. And therefore they would end up being intimate and have children, and so on and so forth. And the water from that is eventually going to be used for the sota, which is also very interesting as a post-Egel issue, because right after the Egel, Moshe comes down and does a sota-like ceremony by breaking down the Egel and putting it together with water and then making the people drink it. So are the Jews, do they have fidelity towards God, and now using this post-Chet Egel to create the kior in order to see if, actually it's there to push aside the jealousy of the husband. And then he stresses, and you should know that these are literal mirrors. Why does he have to say that? And not visions. Because he knows what I told you before, that more often than not, the word would mean a vision, and over here it means something else. Over here it means actually mirrors. How much further do we go here? I think that's enough. Later on, second line from the bottom, he says, mirrors, right? He actually writes mirrors there. I put it in italics. Good. Midrash HaGadol 17. Rabbi Lezer Omer Bavrein Hashem Tzadkaniot Shebador Ma'asu Melamed Shekol Achad V'Achad Hivi Mar'a Echad Shel Nachoshet Kedei Sheyeh Lehem Sham B'nei Atzman. They all brought their own mirrors. B'ato Sha'a Dan Moshe Rabbeinu Beino Lebein Atzmo Mani Oseh B'Merot Halalu Ela Mitoch Shenasu L'Bedika B'Tchila Yu L'Bedika B'Sof. Essentially, he doesn't know about this Rashi. Again, timing and so on, Medrash HaGadol. But he's saying no, quite the opposite. This was used in order for a woman to be inspected. Now, I have to explain this a little bit more. Keep going. So again, going back to this sota, she uses this to make herself attractive to her husband, and now it's going to be used in order to see if a woman had actually cheated on her husband. So they said, no, you use this mirror, which you used for intimacy to be with your husband. That's what's going to prove your innocence. So as I said, he's trying to get some kind of almost like a midah keneged midah over here. Ibn Ezra. Okay, this is really where we had to get to today. There's a little bit afterwards, but 18. V'tam hatzova'od ki mishpat kol hanashim lityapot l'rot pneihem b'chol boker b'merot nachoshet uzchuchit l'taken haparim she'al rasheim. This is what women do. Ibn Ezra tells you, women in the morning, they look in the mirror, make sure they look okay. And he quotes a little bit about this. And he's going to Ki minag Yisrael haya ki minag Yishmael ad hayom v'hinei hayu b'Yisrael nashim ovdot Hashem shesaru mitavot zeh ha'olam. But then there became women who were such that they gave up on the pleasures of this world. But they no longer needed their mirrors. So I know that some of you are thinking that they would look in the morning and they say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the firmest one of all? Says no, that they would look, they came to the point they didn't need the mirrors anymore, and therefore they gave, when you give your mirror away, you say, that's it, certain things don't make a difference to me anymore. I don't look beautiful. What would these women do instead? They'd come every day to the Ol Moed, l'tpalel u'lishmoa divrei hamitzvot, v'zo yishat sav'u petach Ol Moed ki hayu rabot. There's lots and lots of women, and again, you may be thinking, it sounds almost nun-like, right? And this is not necessarily what you would have chosen to say, yeah, that's what Jews do. So I want to continue, because especially the Balei HaTosfot are going to move in a slightly different manner, and they know something about mirrors. So therefore, it's going to be this secret of mirrors. So let's start with the Bechor Shor. And again, always realize if one of the Balei HaTosfot said it, then it spreads. You can just look at the others, and you'll find similar things. So, yeah.
Rashi who gave the interpretation about Netzacheh?
Yes.
Okay, so can this be also Tikkun of the nashim from that story?
Yes, 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 yes. B'marot hatzvot, which is really a great point. You know, again, I don't know about you. I'm going back to what I said in the beginning. You have some people, the burqa ladies. I assume every one of them has like a really, really interesting past. I mean, I actually assume they're full of tattoos and they're full of like all piercings and all kinds of things. I assume that people who've gone down one path and then will overcompensate in the other path in order to try to get some kind of forgiveness. You've learned so many interesting things today. Anyway, the Bechor Shor. B'merut hatzavot shayu natun bein ohel moed bein hamizbeach. Look, the reason I'm saying that is because there is a certain approach in Judaism which I'll call normative. And when somebody goes away from the normative, you have to say, so why are they doing this? So sometimes when you've gone too far one way, then you feel the need the other way, which is why your point about maybe the people who may have sinned in other ways in the time of the Egel Azav, which also makes the Sota process after that so much more interesting. There's a lot more to say about this, including the famous Rashi in Shir Hashirim that you read the Aserta Debrot Cross, and then don't make idols goes together with don't commit adultery. They are connected to one another. But for the third time, let's try to read the Bechor Shor. He says they were put in the Ol Moed, Ubein HaMizbeach, Mashuch Me'at Klapit Safon. So now, obviously, we have to go do a model of the Mishkan and take a look. And what's he saying? Kidei shetir'ena oto anashim hatzovot, v'yen nizkar lahine shameshet mashkin hasotot. So he says that the women who are outside, when you have the basin positioned in the right way and there are mirrors on them, they can stand outside and watch the mirror and see the reflection and see what's going on inside. So then when those guilty women are being tried and being perhaps punished, they can see this, which itself is absolutely fascinating. But that's the nature of a mirror. Previously, they were used to see yourself, but now when they're positioned in this way, he goes, oh, look, you can see in this other direction. In source 21, that's Kahn goes in the same direction. Rav Avram and Rambam 20, they use them in order to be attractive. And I'm skipping there a little bit. And he goes like in the direction of Ben Ezra, and then they move towards Prishut. Shavruat Marotaim, Lafi Shaloya Lahem, Tsarech Behem, והקריבו אותן והחליפו הכלים המוכנים להשגת התאווה והתענוג של המזל לכלים דתיים מוכנים לעבודה לא יתעלה. Again, just moving towards this serving of God. I no longer need my makeup. I no longer need my, I don't know, all the things. My eyeliner and my mascara and my lipstick and my blush. You'll have to tell me what else I missed here along the way. But by the way, these are the questions as Rabbi I can't begin to answer. But what about makeup? I said, just ask my wife. I don't know. Not that she knows all these things that much either. At least she understands. I mean, I'm like the fourth son. Eino de Elishol. She at least understands a bit. Source 22, the Moshe of Zakanim. Again, we're in the world of Tosfot here. He's going to give us a couple different answers or explanations. He quotes Rashi in the very beginning. Moshe finds these things distasteful. V'yesh mafarish b'mot hatzavot lav ha'asiyato kai ela amakom, right? Netinato shenatanotan mehalal mizbech l'tzad safon. Again, the same thing. They're placed in a certain area there towards the north. Kidei shiru oto nashim hatzavot al petach olamod v'nuet libam hashkat sotos. That we just now saw. V'yesh mefarshim dilakach naseh kior b'mar lefisha kohen makrivet korbana shel isha hayat tzarich lakriva lishma v'asur listakel b'paneh. ולכן נעשה הכיור כמו מראה הנשים, עומדת אצל הכיור, ומסתכלה בו, והכהן מסתכל בכיור ומכירה. Did you follow that? Yes, and this is really interesting. He's saying, just like I told you that the woman can stand outside and look at the mirror and look inside, the Kohen can look inside, could be inside and look at the mirror and see the woman who's outside. So he says is that it's obviously inappropriate to look at women. He goes, but nonetheless, when you bring a korban for someone, you need to know who you bring the korban for. So therefore, the woman will be standing over there. Let's call it the Ezrat Hashem. she'd be standing over there, and he would look at the mirror, which then would have a reflection. And let's also recognize something else. The mirrors that we have today are not exactly what copper mirrors were back in the day. And I don't know how clearly you can see. I think to a great extent you're dealing with a distorted type of mirror, but at least you see the person who it is that you bring the korban for. So he just now reversed it, and he's going to keep on going on this. He just now went down the mirror rabbit hole, and he's going to say, okay, once you have mirrors, look where he keeps on going with this. Right? ויש רפרנס להקפיד משה במאורות הצוות שהוא על כיור בין ההיכל והמזבח ופתח היה פתוח וכשנכנס כהן גדול לפנים ועובד עבודה הוא בתוך המאורות וישראל שהיו בעזרה רואים את כל עבודה כהן שעושה על ידי המאורות כאילו היה לפנים. That all the people outside can now see what's going on. This is the closed circuit cameras that now you can see what's going on in the Beit HaMikdash. That you want like this access of holiness, you have it. Why do you have it? Because we have the mirrors. It says no one should be in the Oamod. And Moshe is saying, but no one can be there when this happens, and now everybody can see what's going on. But by the way, God says, no, nobody should be there, but it's okay if everybody looks in. It's okay if everybody sees and understands what the Kohen Gadol is doing inside. So I'm just saying is that you thought like this, innocent, these mirrors. No, the mirrors go in more than one direction, especially these mirrors on this angle, and you see that people are taking different ways. I just want to end up by saying one thing that struck me a couple of months ago when I was learning towards the beginning of Sanhedrin. You can actually, those who learned Daf Yomi can count exactly how long ago this was. It's in source number 24. It's a Gemara, which I'm not going to explain the whole thing over here. It starts with Siman, Kippah, Nafsheh, and so on. It says, Meitvei, Kippah, Shehu Tamei Midras, L'Sefer, Tahor. We're dealing with laws of Tum and Tara, but what is the case? A woman takes her, what do you call this? Hamitpachat. It calls this actually a kippah. If you look at source 25, kippah, shutamei midras and also tahor midras, pirish beged shemasima al rasha. The mitpachad, the hair covering a woman uses, was donated, not new, l'seif. They donated it for Sefer Torah. By the way, you look at Sephardi Torah, sometimes you see that on top there's like some kind of a kerchief-looking thing. This Gemara says that, if you made this donation. Now, this actually begins this whole discussion in halacha, if it's allowed or if it's not allowed, if it's proper, it's improper. The Shulchan Aruch actually brings down in source 26 towards the end, Ve'ein lasot mapot l'sefer Torah midrim yishanim shenasu b'hem davar achar l'tzarech hedyot. You don't use something which was done for a private person's individual use. You don't donate that for the Sefer Torah. But Magen Avram disagrees with Ramah. And what's his clinching argument at the end? His clinching argument is, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Look at towards the end, through like the last 3 lines or so. He goes, no, but they gave the kior, and therefore certainly in this case of donating and again, the Gemara says the women did it. Women would take the hair covering, and by the way, it could very well be that a woman's, first of all, the Sota theme is still all over this, which is interesting. Secondly, is that it could be they consider this is holy. This is something which is holy, and if it's holy, I can donate it to Sefer Torah. And what does the Gemara say? That's what they did. And then afterwards, you find these commentaries, is appropriate, not appropriate, and at the end of the day, but of course it's appropriate. I mean, just going back to that Rashi, the same way that they donated the mirrors, which is holy, I want to go back to that again, that Moshe feels it's inappropriate, God argues, says, no, this is holy, and I'm adding words into this, it's holy, and if it's holy, now it can take its proper place in holiness. But not only is it its proper place of holiness, we saw a couple of more things. This allows the woman who's standing outside to look inside, but it also allows something else. It allows the Kohen who's inside to look back at the women, and therefore this creates this connection between the Am and between the Makom Kadosh. And not only that, when the Kohen Gadol goes in and does whatever it is to do, we can't be there, but we still have I'm going to add one word, our holy mirrors to be able to look and to see what's going on. And it becomes that these are really multifaceted faceted, or it's not faceted. It's mirrors that have all kinds of usage to it, and are just far more interesting than I think we realized when we first read that verse, and maybe just would have connected it to this whole general issue of donations. As I said, right away we saw the commentaries create a narrative. They don't all create the same narrative, but nonetheless, there's a story to be told over here. And as I said, it continues till today of women donating their hair coverings and say, no, I want this to be on the Sefer Torah.